We're reading Rebbe Nachman's wisdom. We're on his pilgrimage, 19. That Sunday, Rebbe Avram went to visit the Rebbe. The two conversed for a long time. After a day or two, the Rebbe became extremely ill. He sent a pidyon to Rebbe Avram, asking him to pray for him. As long as the Rebbe was sick, Rebbe Avram visited him daily. The Rebbe's illness caused him to be directly involved in an episode with an informer. This individual had recently arrived to the Holy Land and had to become an informer for the Pasha, causing much hardship for the Tveria community. He had the community leaders arrested and held in prison for 9 weeks. Some Sephardic Jews went to the Pasha and paid a large ransom to free these prisoners. They captured the informer and attempted to strangle him. He was able to escape only by feigning death. He complained to the Pasha and was appointed as the overseer of the city, to do as he pleased. Accompanied by a regiment of Turkish troops, he returned to Tveria with great fanfare. When the Jewish community saw the troops, they fled the city. They were so terrorized that they did not even wait for the women and children, leaving them crying bitterly in the city. Every house was filled with great weeping. The Rebbe wanted to flee with them, but was prevented by his infirmity. He made an attempt to leave the city, but had to return. This was all Hashem's doing, for it resulted in the entire community being able to return. It turned out that the Rebbe was able to control this informer completely. When the informer went to the Rebbe, he literally humbled himself before the Rebbe's feet. The entire story would consume many volumes. In short, the Rebbe made use of his great intelligence in totally subjugating the informer. By the time he was finished with him, he was able to tell his attendant to announce that all who fled could return. In this city, the Rebbe's illness resulted in everybody returning to the city. The people later found out what happened. The informer was a complete hypocrite, acting as if he were the most pious. As soon as he met the Rebbe, he began to speak about religious matters. The Rebbe pretended that he knew no better, so that it was actually he who tricked the informer. The informer was greatly impressed with the Rebbe's wisdom. The Rebbe then told him, a good overseer should pray to Hashem, asking him to help his Jewish brethren. He should be a pious, humble person. The Rebbe continued to impress the informer with his wisdom and cleverness. He began to speak about prayer, convincing the informer that he should make a habit of chanting the Psalms with great humility. The informer assured the Rebbe that he would heed this advice, but the Rebbe acted very skeptical. Finally, he said, if you want to convince me that you are truly a humble and pious man, this is what you must do. Gather the young boys in my house, and in their presence chant the Psalms with great weeping. This was soon accomplished, and the informer began to chant the Psalms with tears literally rolling down his cheek. Suddenly, he felt faint and became extremely ill. Now this informer had told the Pasha that the Jews were bringing a large sum of money from Europe. The Turks had posted special watchmen at all the city gates, waiting for these emissaries. It was only with God's help that they were prevented from learning the details of the transaction. The Rebbe's attendant was later sent to Haifa, where he collected the funds from the emissaries and brought the money to Tveria. The money was then delivered to the Rebbe, who gave it to the community leaders for distribution. When the informer later recovered, he boasted that he would cause the community even more evil than before. He suddenly fell ill again, but this time he did not recover. He died soon after. When the people returned to Tveria, they all came to the Rebbe and made a great celebration. The community was safe again, and the Rebbe was very happy that he had the merit to bring this about. The Rebbe then went to visit the grave of his grandfather, Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, who was buried in Tveria. He obtained donkeys and visited the holy tombs there. He traveled to Meron and visited the cave of Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai. The author of the Zohar is buried. The Rebbe told all the young men accompanying him to engage in prayer and study of the Zohar, which they did with great enthusiasm. But the Rebbe himself appeared to be doing nothing, just standing in the cave, glowing with joy. Every few minutes he went over to his attendant and said, "Fortunate are you." That night they went from room to room in the cave. Again, the Rebbe cautioned those who were with him to recite passages from the Zohar. However, the Rebbe himself did not say a thing. He merely walked around very happily, humming to himself until daybreak, putting on his talit and tefillin. He then stood and prayed for several hours. From there, they all went to the cave where Hillel is buried. The Rebbe displayed great joy, chanting Psalm 33 and 34 along with the others. Then they went to the grave of Shammai, where the Rebbe began acting very depressed. At first, he was very surprised at his mood, but later said he understood its reason. The reason, however, was never revealed. They also traveled to the other tombs. Approaching a very high mountain, they were informed that there was a cave near its peak where the Tana Rebbe Crispadia is buried. They attempted the climb, but it was too steep for the donkeys. The Rebbe jumped down from his animal and practically climbed on his hands and knees to the top. His attendant followed close behind, and the two finally reached the cave. After staying there for a while, they went down the mountain. Then the group went to another cave where the Holy Child was buried. The cave of the Holy Child was like a deep pit in the ground. There was a rumor that a snake lived there in the cave, and people were afraid to enter. A large tree grew next to the mouth of the cave. The Rebbe climbed down by one of its roots, ignoring all the warnings. He was the first one to ever enter the cave and did not find any snake at all inside. From that time on, people were no longer afraid to go into the cave and visited by all. From there, they visited some other tombs in Meron and then returned to Tiberia. Soon after they returned, the Rebbe told his attendant to go to Haifa and obtain a passage on a ship headed home. The attendant went to do his bidding, but as soon as he came to Haifa, a ship arrived carrying the renowned Rabbi of Slavatka, along with a group of emissaries returning from Europe. It is all this time that the episode mentioned above had occurred. The emissaries heard that the informer had told the Pasha about them, and that the troops were on the lookout for the foreign Jews carrying money. Meeting the Rebbe's attendant, they decided it would be best to send the money with him. Because of this, the Rebbe's attendant had to return to Tiberia without securing passage. When his attendant returned, the Rebbe had said simply, "It is probably Hashem's will that we remain in the Holy Land a while longer." The Rebbe instructed his attendant to obtain donkeys for the journey to Jerusalem. When the Rabbi Avram heard that he was leaving, he asked the Rebbe to remain in Tiberia a while longer. The Rebbe of Slavatka soon arrived in Tiberia. One of the first things he did was to make a large feast in the honor of Rebbe Nachman. He acted very friendly towards him, and they conversed for a long time. Their conversation was absolutely private, and nobody knows what went on between them. But soon after that, the Rebbe made peace with Rebbe of Slavatka and Rebbe Avram of Kalister. A short time later, an epidemic broke out in Tiberia, forcing the Rebbe to flee from his quarters. As soon as he secured lodging in a new area, the plague broke out there too. Then the Rebbe had to flee from Tiberia altogether. The flight from Tiberia involved tremendous peril. The city was sealed because of the plague, and the only exit was through a cave. After crawling through this cave, the Rebbe found his way blocked by a very high wall. The Rebbe climbed the wall and slid over it, thinking that he had escaped. But when he looked down, he saw water beneath him. There he was, hanging by his hands and feet, with nothing but the sea below him. He had only the most meager grip and was sure that he would fall and drown. At this moment, he lifted his heart to Hashem and prayed with all his might. In his mercy, Hashem rescued him. Finally, the Rebbe left Tiberia and reached Sfat. He was there for just a few days when the news arrived that the French were about to invade Acre.